Big up to Brilliant for sponsoring this video. So when I think about like all the stuff that I've managed to achieve so far in my life, like I'm 25, I'm living with a wonderful girlfriend in London. Like, you know, when I look back at my studies, I got an amazing degree from Cambridge. I then, you know, have kind of managed to get a job at a corporate law firm and I'm learning tons and have an amazing salary. But I think what I've kind of come to realize is that no matter how much you might look at me or other people might look at me and feel like, you know, you've achieved so much objective success, actually, just because of the relative way we compare ourselves to others and the stuff that's just above and below us, none of that makes you happy unless you kind of radically adopt a new way of looking at the world that allows you to kind of compare yourself to others much less than at least I have been for quite a while now. And for me, this channel, for example, has been way more successful than I think, you know, I genuinely expected it to be. And it's crazy that like there are tens of thousands of actual people like watching all of my videos. And yet, in spite of the fact that is incredible, I still manage to like make myself feel down and inadequate every time I kind of compare myself to Matt Devella or you know, Nathaniel Drew and their hundreds of thousands of views. There's this like relativity to the way we see our successes such that we kind of always manage to make ourselves feel less than we probably should. And I guess the obvious solution is just like, well, stop comparing yourself to other people. But I think first of all, there is like some usefulness in looking at how good other people are and comparing yourself to them, using that as like a motivator to say, okay, that person is like, you know, that competitivity that humans have innate within them, that can be a huge motivator. And alongside that, assessing like, you know, areas of strength and areas of weakness, it is important to consider like as a benchmark, what are other people doing? And maybe, you know, my strength isn't in, I don't know, maths, but it is in music. That kind of ability to assess where you're strong and then focus in life on those things is really important. So I don't think it's fair to say like, don't compare yourself ever to other people. But I think it has absolutely gone too far. We're comparing even things we're good at to other people and making ourselves feel terrible about them. And so in this video, I basically kind of wanted to share, over the last couple of months, I've really been thinking, first of all, like, what is the problem? Like, why am I comparing myself to others? Second, what is the process that my mind is sort of going through when I start comparing myself to others? Like actually consciously thinking, what is going on in my brain when I'm kind of making myself enter into these spirals of making myself feel bad because, you know, Ali Abdaal has millions of subscribers or Matt Devella has millions of subscribers or someone at work is doing better than me or whatever it is. And then finally, I've kind of done just some reading and listening to some audiobooks to try and come up with some solutions as to how we can solve this. And I'm going to share 4 practical steps that I've been implementing myself to try, at least to some extent, to kind of fend off this negative comparison with others. As I've kind of moved out of studying and into a full-time job as a corporate lawyer, I think one of the things I've struggled with most is, you know, this sense that I have a really long, hopefully, career ahead of me, which is hugely exciting and I am genuinely excited about. But there is also this kind of daunting element to it, which is, you know, I'm now committing like to potentially doing this long term, like for a substantial amount of my life for the first time ever. And as part of that, I've like really been trying to kind of think, you know, I really want to stay conscious of making sure this is a choice that I'm making. This is something I want to do. This is something that I want to continue doing rather than just entering this cycle of going to work, seeing friends at the weekends and kind of living this life where in 10 years time I suddenly look back, or 20 or 30 years time, I suddenly look back and think like, why did I do all of that? And you have these regrets. But I think as part of that, I'm like, therefore, okay, I need to question, is this what I really want? And I don't know, I mean, maybe you don't feel like this, but let me know if you do. as you start to question what you want, you inevitably are like, okay, well, I'm looking at my friend who's a banker and I could have gone into banking, I could have earned even more money, retired earlier, and only worked slightly worse hours. Or I could have worked for a charity, and in that charity, I could have made like a huge amount of difference to the world. Or I could have quit everything and become a YouTuber and run multiple successful businesses. And I look at all like these other options, and the sense that like the grass is always greener is so strong that you idealize like this perfection, these ideas of perfection in other people's lives that you look at. But that is all a myth, right? Like there are so many bad things that come with working for a charity that's publicly funded and the stresses that go along with that, or running your own business and not having the security of a kind of stable amount of income, or working so many hours you have like 1 or 2 weeks of holiday a year to look forward to, and that is it. There are always downsides to the ways other people are living, but we live in this world where we're constantly, and it's a good thing, like to think, is this actually what I want to do? Am I making the right choices for me? But when we do that in a way that's just comparing our life to other people's lives and a perfect version of other people's lives that we're imagining, that is unhelpful, frankly. Oh, one of the amazing things about running like this channel is that I kind of then take the time to think, okay, what is actually the problem here? Like, can I diagnose what I'm doing? And then can I come up with any solutions that might help me and other people? And so for the rest of the video, I basically want to talk through like my diagnosis of the 3 things that I think we're all doing that make us basically pretty miserable at times because we're comparing ourselves to other people. And then 4 kind of quick solutions that I've come up with. So the first like big problem, I think, and I've kind of already touched on this, is this idea that we're comparing ourselves to the very best bits of the very best people we know in certain areas of their lives. So first of all, best people, like we're comparing ourselves to, for example, at work, like I compare myself to the people who are dedicating their whole life to their job. They're doing nothing outside of their job. They love their job. Absolutely. They're smashing it. I then compare myself on social media with the best looking, the most attractive, the kind of, you know, the most popular people who are getting tons of likes. I then on, I don't know, in my channel compare myself to people who have millions of subscribers. Basically in every kind of aspect of our lives, we're not comparing ourselves holistically to other people. We're not comparing our life to their whole life. We're comparing our whole life to like the little bits of their life that we selectively choose, which funnily enough are the very best bits of their life, and make ourselves feel miserable because in that one little aspect they may be better than us, without considering, hey, like that guy may have tons of subscribers but may not be happy in some respect in their life, or you know, that person may be hugely popular on Instagram, may get loads of likes and may be really attractive, but hey, he's not in a happy like relationship, for example. And the second thing is kind of as part of that, social media obviously kind of causes us to then share the very best bits of our life. So it's not only that it's the most attractive person on Instagram that I'm comparing myself to, it's the very best bits of their body or their life or their holiday, and I'm just not getting a complete picture of their experience. And we are also, as a kind of second bucket of reasons we compare ourselves to others, hardwired to focus on negatives. And this kind of manifests itself in kind of 3 ways as far as I can see. The first is what is called in science like negativity bias. So this is the idea that humans just focus on negatives, and like a study from 2010 found that in children as young as 3 months old, when they're assessing kind of how they're going to form relationships with other people, their interactions are based on people's social kind of performance, and they focus excessively, it's been found, on the negative aspects of how people behave. So even as young as 3 months old, babies are forming impressions based on negatives rather than on positives. And this is because we evolutionarily, if that's a word, I don't think it is, but we'll move on. As part of like human evolution, we've had to focus on negatives, on danger, and, learn to evade those things. So that's what's got us to this point. But now we live in our cozy, warm houses with very little danger around us. We're kind of overloading our brains with like sources of danger that don't really exist. The second is confirmation bias. Once we've found like the negative things that we're feeding our brain, because there aren't actually that many negative realities around us or dangers, we then find those in places where they aren't necessarily actually to be found. So what I mean is confirmation bias is where, you have decided that you're not good at something, and your brain like connects or sticks onto any evidence that supports that hypothesis. So for example, like I might say, my YouTube channel, I just don't think people are really liking my videos at the moment. I look through the comments and I like stick on to the 1 or 2 comments. I focus on the negatives that say, this video was rubbish or whatever, which happens all the time. And then every kind of comment that I ever see that reinforces the sense that, my videos are too long or too boring or always the same, I will like cling on to and use as justification to make myself feel rubbish. The reality is there are tons of amazing comments. There are tons of people saying really nice things, but my brain's focusing on negatives and then confirming that negative basis with any evidence it can possibly find. And on top of all of that, I think we also kind of set expectations that we will succeed. And that means that not only are we clinging to negatives, confirming those negatives, we're also, when we succeed, like not enjoying that successfully because it was expected. It's just like, yeah, okay, I did well. Like that is kind of just meeting expectations. And then obviously when we fall below those expectations, we're failing, and that makes us feel miserable. And the third and final problem is, I think, that we base our sense of identity on assumptions. And what I mean by this, I think, is summed up by it's a quote I came across in a Jay Shetty podcast episode. I will link to it in the description. And it's a quote from a guy called Charles Horton Cooley. And he says, "I am not what I think I am. I'm also not what you think I am. I am what I think you think I am." And you have to take a second to rewind and replay that to get your head around what he's saying. But basically the idea is, I'm not even basing my opinion of myself on other people's impressions. I'm basing my opinion of myself on what I imagine other people think of me. I very rarely ask people, actually, what do you think of me? How good a job am I doing? Am I a good boyfriend? Am I, a nice person? These are not questions that we go around asking other people. Instead, we walk around imagining other people thinking bad things about us. And that, again, is just so unhealthy, and it's just like a product. It's not anything we're doing wrong. We are all walking around doing this. But it is an issue, and it's something I think to be aware of. And I was thinking about it the other day because I haven't seen my friends for quite a while. And as you know, I work really, really hard. I have this channel. And so I don't have a huge amount of time to see friends necessarily. And I often worry, maybe all my friends are kind of thinking I'm really kind of boring and dull and just want to work all the time. And, these insecurities come up in me. And the reality is then when I think about my friends who are doing, whatever it is they're doing, and I see them and I enjoy spending time with them, I'm not ever thinking about any of those friends oh, that person is quite boring, or that person doesn't work hard enough, that person has no ambition. That's just not what you walk around thinking about other people. Yet when it's about ourselves, we imagine that other people are walking around thinking about us and thinking these negative things about us, which frankly is completely ridiculous. But we all do it, and it's just stupid. So now I want to move into the practical steps, like the things we can actually do to compare ourselves to others less, or at least feel better about ourselves when we find that we are comparing ourselves to others. And the first thing, the first kind of solution, I guess, is just to be kinder to ourselves and to realize that we are all comparing ourselves to others all the time and being forced by marketers, social media, companies that make money off this to compare ourselves to others. They are amplifying this negative, everything I've just talked about, they are making money off amplifying all of those feelings. So, for example, and Darren Brown talks about this in his book, Happy is one of my favorite segments. He talks about this idea that like the psychology of marketing is to make people think they have a problem, which marketers or companies can then solve, when those people didn't even realize they had a problem in the first place. So he uses the example of like the Dyson fans, which give out a perfectly kind of effortless and unwafty flow of air. And the problem that, you know, these fans, normal conventional fans, will give an irregular airflow. They will have... And he talks about this idea like of him being convinced to buy this fan because he thinks, oh yeah, that irregular airflow, such an issue. Of course, no one thinks like, oh, that's such a problem in my life. Like, no one thinks that. But marketers create these problems for ourselves by comparing our lives to better versions. Or when you watch, I don't know, an ad for some new beauty product and suddenly you like see all of the blackheads that are all over your face because they've showed you these images of how blackheads are filling your pores. That is not an issue that I ever like saw when I looked even in the mirror or, certainly from a distance at my face. But now I feel like my face is covered in filthy blackheads. Or, I lack xinjiang seeds in my diet. I didn't even know what one of those was. And that is not, by the way, a thing, full disclaimer. But we're all having these like problems created for ourselves. And the solution I think I've found is just to like see through that and to see that these are just marketers creating problems for us. And to also be kind, like when we find ourselves feeling bad about ourselves because a marketer or something on social media or an ad or something is making us feel like that, just know that it's making a whole lot of other people feel that way. It's okay, and try to smile through it. Second is an idea that I kind of drew from Cal Newport's book, So Good They Can't Ignore You, but that I've kind of changed a little bit to specifically target like comparing ourselves to others. It's this idea, and he talks about the need to kind of look beyond finding your passion and how, lots of people will spend their lives looking or waiting for something that they can be passionate about. But the reality is no one is born passionate. No one has this like inherent sense of passion for anything. It won't come to you. You just need to commit to doing something for long enough to get good at it, and that will then become your passion. And I think this translates across into comparing ourselves to others, because often I find like I'll look out and think, wow, that person who works for that charity like really has their stuff together. They know what they want to do. They have like a passion and a drive, and I don't necessarily. But I think the reality is we often look at other people and we'll think that they know what their passion is and they have everything together. They know what they want to do. And we imagine as though there are these like perfect routes that we could take, and that would lead us to happiness. That would be our ideal route, and we're kind of waiting for that to happen to us. But the reality is, again, and I think this is kind of the solution, is we need to know there is no perfect path. There are very many paths that we could all take, and those, some may be better than others, but what we make of those is really what matters. So try to obsess less about thinking like, is this my perfect route? Is this absolutely what I was meant to do? And just focus on making what you have the best it can be. So really quickly, before we move on to the third and fourth solutions, I want to tell you about today's sponsor, Brilliant. Brilliant tells these kind of interactive stories that reduce what seems like a really complex idea. We're talking multivariable calculus neural networks and all that kind of clever stuff, powering the future of the world into something you can truly understand. Brilliant says that it guides you to explore the laws that shape our world. And that has been my genuine experience of it so far. The Python course has improved my understanding of the programming language better than any app or course I've ever used. It allows you to develop this deep understanding with relative ease because everything is just so approachable and bite-sized and really strangely addictive, which feels like a really weird thing to say about an education app, but it really is. The courses focus on developing a sharpness in the way you think through interactive quizzes and challenges, and if you struggle at all with maths or science, for example, I have no doubt that the way it breaks things down will increase your confidence and knowledge pretty flipping quickly. The first 200 people to sign up to Brilliant using my link at the top of the description will get 20% off their annual subscription, so do go and check Brilliant out. So the third, and I think the most powerful idea that I want to share comes from Nassim Taleb, and it's this idea that there are some identities that are what he calls fragile. That is, I'm hardworking as a person. I am a good-looking person. I am a kind person. I am an empathetic person, whatever it is. These are what he calls fragile identities because we're relying on one sort of single aspect of ourselves and putting all our eggs in that basket. So if we fail in that thing, we kind of crumble and make ourselves feel rubbish. On the other hand, it talks about these identities which can be anti-fragile. And specifically the one I kind of want to tell you about that I've really been thinking about is this identity as a learner. It's this sense that, no matter what we do, if we think of ourselves as nothing more than learners, as people who are kind of going through life, like learning things as we go, if we fail, if I make a mistake at work, it doesn't destroy my identity. I identify to a degree as like a corporate lawyer, as a hardworking person. So when at work I was told like I'd done things wrong when I first started, which absolutely did happen, that really hurt me. But instead, thinking, hold on, I'm nothing more than a learner. I'm just someone going through life, trying to figure out how to do things as best I can. Reframing it in that way, I think, means that when you get criticism, when you get negative feedback, and we all get that all the time, we can then actually say, well, I'm just gonna learn from it. That doesn't hurt my identity. In fact, it helps my identity as a learner because I need negative feedback to grow. And it maybe does sound like a little bit waffly and kind of I guess. But I genuinely think if you try and focus on just thinking of yourself as a learner and thinking of all these different aspects of your personality that feed into who you are. So that could be being a boyfriend for me, being a son, being a corporate lawyer, making these videos, being a friend to my friends, all these different aspects of our personalities. And this idea of wearing many hats, that we have all these different hats that we wear. And if one of those things goes badly, or we don't do so well in our studies, or something goes wrong, we're a learner overall. And we have so many different kind of aspects to our lives that just one of those going badly shouldn't completely annihilate any positive mood we have. It should, not completely dominate our entire existence. And the final very quick idea is to record positives in our lives. I've obviously talked a lot about how we're hardwired to focus on negatives, but I know loads of people, and this is something I really want to try and do more, who, record emails at work with any positive feedback in a folder. They screenshot, for example, positive comments they get on their videos or nice comments they get on their Instagram photos, so that they have a place that when they feel like they're ugly or they feel like they're, not working well or being unproductive or have failed, they can look at least this kind of source of positivity and focus on the positives rather than the negatives. Please do let me know what you thought of this video in the comments if you found any of this useful at all. And also, if you have any ideas that, I could maybe implement to help stop comparing myself to others so much, I'm always on the lookout for new ideas. And yeah, if you enjoyed this video, please do go and check out my other video on toxic productivity, where I talk about how I'm trying to overcome feeling like everyone else is more productive than I am. And finally, please do remember that you can sign up for Brilliant through the link in the description. Thanks so much for watching. Like, subscribe, comment, and I will speak again very soon.